I'm Eric Barden.
I'm Amy Barden.
And this is Bombardment. Today we're going to continue a conversation with Jacob Ivan Schmitt, very compelling guy. It'll be good to pick up where we left off, talking about the carceral system and what we're going to do in the future to help folks break the cycle of crime and addiction that leads to lifetime in and out of jails and prisons.
Yeah, I think people like Jacob are going to change the system, actually. I think the average person just has not known. You know, when he talks about time spent, even when I say, when was the first time you were arrested, what his mind goes to is mental health treatment, right? When he's an inpatient remanded to treatment, how abusive that environment was. I think we're close in age during those years. And so we can look at that system and go, okay, that's horrible and that's not designed to heal or change. And then we look at corrections. And a lot of people say, again, there's varying reviews. Some people say it is horrible and abusive. I think it depends on who your corrections officers were and where you were. But nobody has said it's designed to predictably heal and change somebody's life. I have never heard that.
Well, we all stand to benefit from identifying what we can do as a society systemically to allow people the greatest opportunity to change the course of their lives. It's to all of our benefit to do that, and we're going to dive into that more with Jacob in a minute. So stand by to be bombarded. You know, one of the things you're talking about with programs and funding and policy, it often has a financial component to it. And it just boggles my mind that we're so short-sighted in terms of funding programs, because the whole goal, and I agree with you on the recidivism rates. That my real world experience does not comport with such low numbers of recidivism.
That we're healing people and changing lives.
We're winning.
Yeah.
But what people, I think, often fail to understand is not only is it the right thing to do from a human perspective to help folks, not only is it a good thing to do from a future community member perspective, the right thing to do, it's also less expensive.
Oh, wow.
It's way less expensive.
I mean, and you know, it's a sad thing that ultimately we get down to expenses, right?
Yeah.
But I want to say something, you know. Let's play make-believe and say we start giving trauma care, which is going to take a financial investment, even though I developed a pilot program where it could be delivered telemedicine, which would not require the Department of Corrections to have FTEs and would allow them to bill using Medicaid like they do if when I went out for spinal surgery. Department of Corrections didn't pay for that. They had me fill out the paperwork. They had Medicaid pay for it. Mm-hmm. So I developed that pilot program, but you know who's going to fund it or pull the trigger on it? Nobody in this state. Yeah. I'll get a lot of conversations where people think it's a great idea and stuff, but the action's not going to come through. When we talk about this flow chart, we need to improve the conditions of incarceration and we need to provide trauma care. And then if we're improving the way that we're receiving people into the community, which we're doing a really decent job of breaking down barriers. I cannot believe that I was accepted to live in an apartment that I applied for in Issaquah.
Yeah.
I have never, at 51 years old, lived on my own, and I have never lived in a place nice and safe in all my life. If we bring them back to the community in a way that allows them to successfully transition, because most people never imagine being able to make $25, $30 an hour in the trades or doing community service work, then what happens is police, which is where you were a very successful law enforcement officer. And honestly, I have tremendous respect for you.
Thank you.
I do. I wouldn't be in this space with you if I didn't. And I mean that. I don't tell lies.
Yeah.
I don't lie. One of the greatest freedoms I have is I don't lie to people, which you may have noticed through the course of this interview.
I love it.
But then we will see less of those recidivism people because they'll be coming back to your colleagues in smaller numbers. And then if we're sending them to the prosecutors in smaller numbers, in theory, the prosecutor offices would be reducing. We know that's not going to be the case because they're just as much a part of the business as anybody else. But the real tender point there is that very small experience that happens in the courtroom at sentencing. Unless those laws change, the same sentences will be imposed.
I think it's so arbitrary. I mean, that was one of, I'm new to all of this. And I remember thinking days spent in a place does not at all indicate change, and so it's so frustrating to meet people. Eric and I were recently out at Olympic Corrections. Jenny Burton is piloting a program.
Sure, I know Jenny.
Yeah. And it was interesting to talk to people who clearly have redesigned their lives, unpacked this stuff. Everything on paper would indicate they could be in community tomorrow. That's what you're speaking to. And I'd ask, are you close? I've got 5 more years. And I thought, what is the virtue of keeping this person for 5 more years after they've already spent 15 or whatever it was changing? And we're going to spend $70,000, $80,000 a year to keep this person in this place. To what end? This person could have a job and be paying taxes.
It's about eye for an eye. It's about punitive. I will say this, they had a study done a few years ago, and the watermark is 15 years. Anything after that degrades. As a footnote, Rory,
say
would
more
you guys
about
like
that.
to go to the Concerned Lifers Organization event in May at Monroe?
Sure.
Would you?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Rory, get them connected, please.
Yeah. So tell me about the 15 years. Do you mean after that point?
Yeah, it's a downhill slide. So a handful of years ago, a friend of mine, Roger Goodman, who's the chair of the Community Safety Committee here in Washington.
I know. I've traveled with Roger.
Yeah. So I forgot about that. So Roger had the keen insight to have a study done. This was back when they were talking about a community review board, like what can we do? And he had a review done. He had the study done, and the study came back. They thought 20 years or 25 years was where they should be having their vision, their eyesight focused, and it came back at 15 years. And he's one of the only people who's actually stood on that number.
Yeah.
Like who said, listen, you know what? I had this study done. I didn't do this. It's not like Roger went in his bathroom and scrawled this out when nobody was looking. He had a study done that was paid for by the legislature, and it came back that 15 years and anything after that is a downhill slide and creates a detrimental risk, not just to the person's welfare and mental health, but to the community.
Yeah.
And yet we still hand out 30-year sentences to people, either kill them, lock them up for life, and tell them, I'm never going to let you out, and then give them something that looks like a humane condition, or give them the option, hey, listen, you can take this cyanide over here. Because there are days right now where I think about, man, I don't know why I don't drive into the Meridian, and I'm free. I'm supposed to be making it.
Yeah.
And I think, man, what is the purpose of all this?
Well, it really is. I think folks, I cannot imagine, like when people say, that person, didn't get a very, it's easy for people to say, they didn't get a very stiff sentence, a judge something, right? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure an afternoon of incarceration would be really, really troublesome for me. Like, I can't even imagine it. When people say, we were talking to one of the gentlemen out at Olympic Corrections, and I think he had served 17 or 15 or something, and he had just a couple years left. And somebody made a statement about, it's close then. And I was just like, it doesn't see like 2 years left. It does not seem close to me. That seems like a long time in the future. When we start talking, we shouldn't be cavalier about the number of years that folks are spending. And to your point, it's what we should be talking about is rehabilitation, getting this person to be able to deal with trauma, to hold themselves accountable. One of the things you've said is like the freedom to be honest and speak truth and have integrity. All that stuff builds from within. And folks, you also, I'm sure, feel like you have purpose as well, because you're doing important things, and that value, that feeling of purpose. We've talked to a number of folks that have recovered from addiction, severe addiction, and one of the components that is throughout all of those is they needed to feel value. They needed to feel like they were valuable people. And I think that also has something to do with the trauma, the dealing with the trauma, the sort of working through that, is that I have value. I'm a good person. I
can't get that far for myself. I still struggle with that. I have two things that I want to ask. I want us to put a pin in that small space that I was talking about, because there's something I think that is important for me to speak to on that. But I also don't want to walk away from what you're talking about now.
Go there. Tell us about the small space, and then we cannot end this without more discussion on the family and
what happened.
That's critical.
The life away from that. Before I go into that, I want to say something. When we talk about successful transitions back into the community, I left prison so much further ahead of the curve than most people would have thought, just because of the way that I thought and the way that I lived. But I'm going to be clear with you. Larry Jefferson, the director of the Washington State Office of Public Defense, Katrine Johnson, Sophia Bird, McSherry, Tracy Sims, and the list goes on. Liz Mustin, Travis Stearns. These are all people who work at the Office of Public Defense. And they received me. And then a woman named Ashley Pilatos, the wife of a close, dear friend of mine, gave me a place to live and assisted Rory and I both in securing transportation. Without Ashley, and definitely without the Office of Public Defense and the culture that they have there, this warm, loving, and embracing culture where they were so considerate of all of my learning curves and all the times that I felt like just recently oh shit, I don't know if you knew this. I had a scam almost. It came to say us Tukwila Police Department.
Oh, really?
And they told me, I was like, well, I was in Chipotle and I answered it. And I said, so wait, how? I stepped outside and they were like, yeah, it's such a blah, blah, blah. I'm investigating you for, crime, blah, blah, blah. I want to ask you some questions. I said, I don't answer questions. My lawyer's name is Jeff Ellis. I hung up and I was panicked.
Oh.
Like I freaked out. I freaked out. Like I was scared to death in a very visceral way, right? Yeah. And it took me hours before I started thinking through. I was like, wait a second, the cops know my history. They're not going to call me. They're going to send a couple people to see me, right? Maybe more than a couple. And so I was like, man, wait a second. And they don't give information when they call you and stuff. So finally I called the non-emergency line and I talked to the lady. She's like, and I did what anybody does. I use ChatGPT. And ChatGPT brought it all back to me. Yeah, they do this all the time. It's called spoofing. I didn't know I could get it set up so that it shows that a call's coming from your name and your number. I didn't know that could happen.
Right.
I thought my iPhone had that stuff locked down. It couldn't happen. Well, it can.
Yeah.
Finally, because they said we're almost certain, but I can't live with almost. I went down to the police department in Tukwila.
Yeah.
I said, hey, this is who I am. I received this call. I think it's a scam. Here's my birth date, my full name. I need you to go back there and find out if any of your people are looking for me. I'm going to wait here 30 minutes. I waited 35 minutes, went back. I spoke to the lady. She says, look, you're not in the system. I talked to people like nobody's looking for you. But I was terrified.
Right.
So this little space here, when I was talking about earlier about what happens at sentencing, where our judges have almost no power, which is not appropriate. Prosecutors have enormous power, which is not appropriate. And defense attorneys oftentimes who are under-resourced and overworked just don't have anything available to them to try to bring this person to the court in a humanizing way. That is all set by the laws. And about 2 months ago, I had somebody ask me something because I was on my rant about how the police are militarized and so many of them are ex-military and they look at us as this instead of seeing us as this, right? And I talk about the Department of Corrections and the apathy in their culture and the way that it extends, the way it ends up boots on the ground, man, where we have no power and we have no human value, or feels like no human value. We have a capital because it's a money-making machine. And they said to me, Jacob, do you think that it's really the police that are wrong? Or is whatever going on there, is that an extension of the laws? And what about the Department of Corrections was my next reason question. Are they really the problem, or did they get constructed with their energy and the way they deliver based upon the laws that are in effect? And I have to answer that with a yes. and there's only one group of people who are responsible for the laws. I count a number of people in our legislature as friends, as colleagues. When they call, I come, okay? Just that simple. And I'm not just talking about because I feel like I need to because they're in a position of power. They're not in a position of power over me, but I come because I care and I know that they care. But when they get into their seat, it is not enough. And I'll use juvenile points as a perfect example. Our legislature was so proud of themselves for passing a law that stopped the use of juvenile adjudications of guilt. They're not even convictions. They're adjudications of guilt decided on a preponderance of the evidence standard. When they said, we're not going to allow those to be used to increase an adult sentence, they were proud of themselves. I have a question for you. My friend wore this T-shirt to the signing of that bill with Inslee, and it said, what if the 13th Amendment was not retroactive? How can we, as a society or as our legislature, say to do this is wrong and then ignore what has happened prior to them making that declaration? They don't come to that place without good science, without good social evolution and understanding. 100 years ago, I could marry a 13-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Today, that's not okay because we have developed a change in our understanding of things. It is not okay to make a change today and prospective so that you can sleep well tonight. If you are elected into your position, you were deputy chief.
Yep.
In that position, did you not feel a hereditary responsibility? Did you not feel that the decisions of people before you, that if they were brought to you as something that was potentially wrong, that you should, in your current role, address those wrongs? If you felt that, if you decided, wait, no, this was wrong, this was a bad decision, this was a bad thing, and I have the ability to change it, would you change it?
Of course.
He did a lot of that.
Okay.
Actually. Yeah.
And so my challenge to the legislature is just because you can sleep well tonight based on your decisions, you assume a hereditary responsibility when you take roles like that for the people before you. And when you have to examine the decisions that they make, just like our 9 justices on our Supreme Court, they abrogate cases. Not all the time, but many times, because they decide that the previous 9 justices whatever they decided then doesn't match up with what we know today. There's a hereditary responsibility. I feel a responsibility for the things that I've done. I challenge things that existed way before I ever walked into San Quentin. I stand in the face of so much negativity. The most inherently negative place we have in our country is prison. And me and my colleagues, I tell you what we are, we're harbingers of change. Yeah. We are the dragon slayers because we are the ones who are trying to kill and fight something that is almost intangible, but we feel it.
So tell me, when you know, it sounds like the family part was part of this process
it really was
of accountability internal to your own way of thinking, your own approach. Tell us about that.
I like the word agency. I think that accountability has a lot of different perspectives tied to it. I think when a person takes agency over their life, and you can do that while you're on the inside, I think that part of taking that agency in a healthy way requires an acknowledgement of the harms that you've caused and an acceptance that the harms that have been done to you don't need to direct your today or tomorrow. When I was brought into the family, when I was invited in, it was a group of friends, and it wasn't what it became in the 2000s. However, in 1999, when I was arrested, I just wanted away. I didn't want to be a part of this. I had released from prison with a commitment that I was going to get out and rob banks and fund things. And I robbed a bank in Portland. I remember when I ran out, I jumped in the car. I remember I was so sick, I threw up in the bag on the money. I was so sick. I mean, I remember just being so disgusted with what I was doing and the way that I was living. But I also didn't know that there was any way out because my life had taught me I was going back to prison. And when I got arrested, I confessed. I wanted to confess. I wanted to just get it all over with. And the U.S. Marshal Tom Lanier, who was a friend of mine for a long time, promised me that and I told him, I was like, listen, man, if I tell you, man, people are going to try to kill me. And he promised me that they would protect me. He said, we'll put you in a prison like way back east where nobody knows you, just all these different things. And I confessed. And I told them, hey, listen, man, I'm a member of this group and they're going to try to get me. And the FBI leaked that to the press, the whole confession, the whole thing. It was in the Seattle Times. And they did that so that they could leverage me to make sure that I would cooperate after I confessed, because that's what law enforcement does, right? And that almost resulted in me getting murdered. And it was a big deal. I had been there 6 months in the jail, in the federal detention center. Nobody knew anything about me. I was an orderly. I was finally having the greatest freedom I ever found was the ability to have friendships based upon my interactions with people and not ideologically and not based upon their willingness to be violent. And I was friends with these 3 Cuban guys and my Chinese friend Chi Kung Ling, and it was just beautiful. My friend George Gordetsky, who I'm friends with today, which is a wonderful story because he's Jewish. And when that newspaper article was there, and I was first in a cell with a guy named Andy Gazesh, and then he had me moved because George took him the newspaper article. Andy was Jewish. And I remember telling Andy a week or two later, I was like, listen, man, I think you might be the first Jewish person I ever met. Like I understand all the hype, but like, look, it's not a thing. Andy and I became friends, unfortunately, and sadly, he died from an overdose. George and I remain close, dear friends today. So I was there 6 months, and they put me in the hole and for ongoing and gang activity. And they brought me out the next day into this lieutenant's room, and it was packed with people, standing room only. And this guy, Captain Conger, who I discovered later was this legend in Allenwood back east and stuff, he was there because he was the captain of the FDC. And this black guy named Keith Evans sat down next to me, really well-built black guy in a really nice suit. And he was what was called, he's an SIA agent. Do you know what SIA, so SIS are the investigators. SIA agents actually work out of the FBI's office. They actually have the ability to go arrest the warden. Yeah, because, you can't do nothing to a warden. If you could be a cop if you walk onto the warden's grounds and tell him you want to arrest him, he can put you in the hole. Yeah. Like seriously, it's crazy what a warden can do. Yeah. And he said, man, so I hear, man, you're trouble. And the Department of Corrections had contacted him, and they knew nothing about me. And they were like, man, what are you talking about, man? This guy's 38 assaults on staff. And like, what are you talking about, man? This guy's a maniac. I wasn't a maniac. I was given a situational change. I was given an opportunity to leave, and I seized it. Keith took a chance on me. He told me, he says, I remember he said, dog, all you guys say the same thing, man, that you don't want no problems. You're going to do the right thing. You want to stay out of trouble. And as soon as you get comfortable, you're running some poker tables and you're beating people up and stuff. I said, look, man, I've been here 6 months and you ain't heard my name at all. Like, listen, I want to find a different, better life, right? And Keith Evans was instrumental in saving my life. Not only did he receive the information that I was going to be killed, because since it was in the newspaper, the Aryan family at that point had been a secret organization. So the fact that their name was in the newspaper, they knew for sure that I had snitched. And they tried to kill me. They had a plan to kill me. At one point, I had 3 SWAT teams taking me to court up in Snohomish County. Lead car, our car, chase car, bulletproof vest. My federal judge, Marcia Peckman, as I've been told from my prosecutor, she was furious. You guys have had him here in the courtroom. He sits next to me, and there are people really trying to murder him. And she could not stop the Snohomish County warrant or a subpoena. And when it was all said and done, after I had testified, Keith Evans saved my life. He wrote a declaration, which I possess today. And he said, there is no safe place that I can identify in the Federal Bureau of Prisons for him, because the family had at that time, good relationships with the Brotherhood. And so he recommended my placement in, the media calls it Witness Protection Program. It's actually a Witness Security Protection Program. And it's managed by Office of Enforcement and Operations, a very small and not often known branch of the Department of Justice. And I went into WITSEC for 7.5 years. So WITSEC consists of phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is your term of incarceration, and phase 2 is post-release identity reassignment. Not everybody goes into identity reassignment, and I never completed phase 1 because they say I left, my federal prosecutor and I say they kicked me out, tomato, tomato. And I was thrust into general population in 2008 down in Florida, where I had to embrace the worst part of myself. Because as soon as I got there, the staff, the officers put me out for having been been a snitch. And I had slapped the nation shot caller in front of the chapel. I stood down a little resident brotherhood guy, the bikers, and I did it all through willingness. They knew I was more willing to hurt them than they were to hurt me. It was a very difficult period in my life as I look back on it, because it's been a very difficult place for me to come back from, this very single place where I made all the decisions and where I don't listen to anybody else's input because nobody else can tell me how to do this. But I also made some of the closest friends that I'll ever make in my life throughout that period of time. And many of the people who were in WITSEC, we remain friends and in contact. We're all kind of a bit of a network across the country. And so Keith Evans saved my life, along with a number of other people. WITSEC gave me an opportunity for the Federal Bureau of Prisons to change, because initially when you went in, you had to have your PSI. You had, so you get to a yard somewhere, a prison main line. Let me see your paperwork, man. Let me see your PSI, because your pre-sentence investigation report has it all in there. Oh, I don't have it. Well, you better get it. You got 30 days. Well, by the time I left WITSEC to go to general population, you were no longer allowed to possess that kind of paperwork. You weren't even allowed to have it. So the Bureau of Prisons had put in mechanisms that were saving people and providing safety for them. And so I managed 5 years, and before I was released from federal prison, I wasn't truly released. I went to federal work release. The second bank I robbed, I make comments about it in jest, but the truth is I robbed that bank because I was trying to save somebody else's life. I was trying to fix other people's problems. It was my first exposure to addiction. The Federal Bureau of Prisons was making me do relapse prevention. I have never been arrested under the influence of alcohol, drugs in my entire life. I've never been in possession of either, in prison or outside of prison. And somehow I was doing relapse prevention, and that's because when the feds are paying, everybody wants to get paid, which is why I don't work with Pioneer Services. Pioneer Human Services is an agency that I'll never work with until I get to sniff them out and see some real substantive changes in what they do. So I met 4,983 days I served on the inside, and I met a pretty girl wearing yoga pants. I'm only Cuban. And she had 2 amazing kids. And she'd been clean and sober 2 years. I moved into her house. I got the first job I applied for. I learned to be an electrician in prison. And I moved into her house. I was placed on home confinement, and discovered that she was in active addiction, that she wasn't clean and sober. And I had never been around anybody who was an addict. And it's a horrifying and painful experience just for the person who loves an addict. And she told me she knew what she was doing. I thought she did. Hey, listen, you know what you're doing? No, she didn't. She turned into dirty UA, and 3 weeks, in, CPS came and took these kids. And it was so traumatizing to me. It was so traumatizing. I picked the daughter up from daycare where she was. I remember carrying her out and her just screaming. And this screaming voice, because she was being separated from her mom again, and they placed the kids back with their grandpa, who was a mean drunk, which was a very sensitive place for me. And I didn't understand what triggers were.
Right.
And one morning, it was a Tuesday morning, December 3rd, I was on break. I was working, they were doing the remodel for the Foursquare Church out in, I think, Puyallup or whatever. I was on that job, and I was in my car. I remember I was dipping chips into some cheese sauce or whatever, and Haley called me. Excuse me, I probably shouldn't say her. Oh, she's an adult now. She called, and she asked me if I could bring her some food. And so their grandpa had told them they were old enough to cook for themselves, which just meant he didn't want to have to get up, because an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old are not old enough to cook. They can warm something up in a microwave. And she told me she tried to call her mom and couldn't get a hold of her. And I knew that she had taken some Vicodin the night before. And I had $43 and some change. And I knew that if I bought her McDonald's, I wasn't going to have enough money to make it till Friday when I got paid. I didn't have anybody in this world I could have asked for $50. If I had, I wouldn't have robbed the bank then. But I think that I was already on this downward slide because I just hurt so badly. And things went from sunshine to shit so quickly. And it was just, it had just become pain. So I asked myself, the worst question I ever asked myself, and as when I was unhealthy anyways, I asked myself, what would I have wanted an adult to do to save or protect me when I was a kid? And the answer was anything. I took her McDonald's and I tried to rob a bank so that I had enough money to fix things. Because I told myself, if I just have enough money, I can get her into treatment on the Suboxone, which now I understand is not actually the solution, but I didn't understand anything about that. And I can get a better place because, at this point I'm living in the federal work release in Seattle because they want 25% of the money I'm bringing in. And I'm paying for this hotel. I'm paying for this apartment in Tacoma, and I'm commuting, which is killing me. And I just couldn't do it. If I just had enough money. And of course, I didn't get away with the bank robbery. And I got arrested. What I went to prison doing was actually, and I'm surprised I'm going to tell you this because I've only told it to a few people. When I got arrested after the canine chewed my leg up, I remember asking the officer, why'd you put the dog on me when I was on the ground in a prone position and I was unarmed? He said, you shouldn't have run. I remember that very regularly when my knee hurts, don't run because the cops will put a police dog on you when you're laying on the ground prone and I'm unarmed. Talking about that, I lost my thread. I'm sorry.
It's good.
Going back to prison.
You've covered it, I think.
Well, actually, I haven't. I want to tell you something that's important to me.
Finish it up. Yeah.
I was in county jail, and I started praying, and I prayed, and I found this enormous peace. And I remember reading the Bible every day, and I didn't cuss, and I had this incredible peace. And I told God that whatever he wanted was what I would go with. I was leaving it to him. I surrendered everything. And my attorney, the best he could get was an offer from the prosecutor's office of 30 years. And I told God, prayed, told God, if that's what he wanted, if he wanted me to go to prison and spend my life there and retire to the community at 60, if he wanted me to live my life backwards, that's what I would do. And I walked into court, I took that 30 years and I didn't shed a tear. And I went to prison, did exactly what I said I would. I built a program. During COVID, we delivered the only reentry assistance to a prison. I managed to get 27 people to follow my guidance and my leadership. I never asked God to release me. I asked him to deliver me.
It's beautiful, man.
And eventually he did.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's fantastic. That is a redemption story, and it's inspiring. And what you're telling us, and the vulnerability that you're providing is an opportunity for folks to learn a perspective that people don't have access to, right? So we appreciate you being willing to share that with us.
Yeah, and this is how it changes, right? People like me never knew your story. It has not been out there. This is all completely opaque in the system. And so, every day I learn something new, and I think, we have designed all of this to fail people. And so when I'm talking to policymakers or people in positions of power, I'm saying just anything you look at, would it predictably repattern behavior the way that you want? It's not really that hard. I talk about the value of life every day, and thank God that you lived, Jacob, honestly. Thank God, because I know it's hard. I actually don't. I can't imagine what it feels like to have to go back through these darkest moments in your life for our benefit. And I hope that you don't have to dwell on this space for too much longer. I hope you can be on the reconstruction side.
But I live in this space. The only reason why I have a job is because of this space. my whole life turns on this space.
Yeah.
When I meet new people, I tell them I used to be a bank robber, but I wasn't very good at it. And I do that as a defense mechanism so that I don't get hurt. So I don't like somebody and then they find out my history and decide that they hope I have a great life. I just can't be a part of theirs.
Yeah.
So I do that
Yeah.
to drive people away from me so that I don't get hurt.
Yeah.
But I don't get to walk away from this. I don't get to leave this because it's the sword that I use to try to help make change.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, Amy says, thank you for doing this for us. But also, I mean, and I'm sure that you in your heart know that you're also helping folks, the young Jacobs that are going to come, right? And really society, really. I mean, we're all in this together, whether we want to be or not. And your perspective and your voice is something that we typically don't have. And so again, your willingness to share with us is fantastic. This has been an amazing time with you. I don't think we've covered 10% of what we need to cover. So we're going to have you back and talk with you more and learn more about a perspective that most of us don't have any visibility in. So thank you.
And I'll try to be less emotional and maybe a little bit more productive because honestly, I have ideas on how we can improve the system.
Yeah.
And when I say we, I do mean we as a collective.
That's right.
Because I challenge the incarcerated population. I challenge them to embrace courage in its real way, in a real fashion, because punching somebody when they bump into you, that's not courage. Courage is standing in the face of a level of negativity that you by yourself do not think that you can overcome, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't fight it. And I want to say this, Oscar Wilde said, "The vilest deeds like poisoned weeds bloom well in prison air. 'Tis only what is good in man that wastes and withers there." And he was right. And I don't think they built this system necessarily with negative intention because it was all done incrementally. But I think as those building blocks were placed onto it, they continued to use flawed materials and flawed ideals that we know today are not serving us in the way that we need to be served.
We could change it tomorrow. You know that. I mean, we've got therapeutic community models that work that are 30 months long. I hear people talking about Norway all the time. We could change it. We're not saving money. We're not saving lives. It could change.
We are not saving lives. And it's a sad thing. I see people that I know on the news doing the same thing that they always did because nobody offered them the opportunity to break out of the cycle. Yeah. I have a close friend who was a colleague who was recently arrested for selling drugs, possession of drugs, nobody really looks at his history. He was born in prison.
Yeah.
His mother sold drugs all throughout his childhood, through his formative years. Did he fail the system or did the system fail him? Because did they ever offer him the care that he needed to get that stuff out of him? Because that's the trick. We have to learn how to be in prison without allowing prison to be in us. And my friend Jill Anderson asked me years ago, and I love her, and I'll make sure she listens to this podcast somewhere if I ever know where it's at. She asked me, "Are you in prison or is prison in you?" And ultimately, I learned what I always said to the people in my Reentry program, the people, my team, my core facilitators. We have to learn to be in prison without allowing prison to be in us. And that takes, if you want to find a tough guy, you'll find a person who stands in the face of that much adversity and figures out how to hold themselves up and hold themselves accountable and develop integrity.
That's awesome. Before we go, what is your program called? What are you, if we can get like just some of that detailed information, folks are going to want to know.
So when I was released from prison, I launched a company called Just Us Solutions. Richard Pryor said it, there is no justice, there's just us. And the name Just Us Solutions is not just intended to say that the people who have been system impacted in some fashion are the solution, because you are part of us. You are, both of you are part of us. The police in the streets are part of us. We are the solution, but we don't have enough we. We have a lot of adversarial lines drawn between ourselves. I personally have a history of drawing a line in the sand and picking up an axe instead of drawing a line in the hand and then reaching across to shake hands. Just Us Solutions, at this time, we have 4 part-time contractors, 1 full-time contractor, who's my assistant director, and then myself. And what we substantively, what we do is we work to improve access to services, right? We work to help develop strategies for those services.
For folks on the inside or folks that are in reentry?
Substantively right now for the people who are releasing, but I enjoy having dialogue and conversations with people who are in the Department of Corrections or who are in law enforcement about or in the legislature, what strategies can we put into place that are going to actually improve what's going on in prison. And so we develop strategy. We use, my assistant director has a unique life experience, and that is that he went to prison as an adult after 2 tours of combat and when he was in the Army, and so he went to prison and he got out. So he had a lot of life before prison. So he has a perspective that complements mine and balances mine as somebody who grew up there and never knew anything except for that I didn't want it. Mm-hmm. Like I knew that, right? I knew that I wanted this. Mm-hmm. And I could never have imagined this without my dear friend, Rebecca Davis Susskind, who breathed into me the idea that I was someday gonna be doing something important. And I give mention to her because, life brings us some friends that impact us in ways that they never know unless you speak to it. Yeah. Just Us Solutions, our goal is to show up and be in places and spaces and to try to help de-vilify the people who have been impacted by the system in every way that we can. We strive to work with policymakers to help improve their understanding by sharing perspective, and then also maybe developing strategies that make sense overall. Our goal with Just Us Solutions is I want to leave the world better than it found me. Okay? Nice, I don't want to take it over. I don't want to change it. I want to leave it better than it found me.
That's a great goal for all of us to have, and appreciate you, again, sharing your story with us. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you both for having me.
We're with you. Both, I think in 10 years it's going to be really different. I think that there is so much appetite, almost desperation to change things and to improve things. I do think there's a lot more empathy now. I was speaking to the council recently, and I started my remarks with the ACEs study, talking about how that came out when I was in college. And the significance of that is understanding that mental health and health are the same thing in ways that we can't even understand, but we can see it, right, in the data. And then we also became more sophisticated in understanding you likely have the backstory you have. It is predictable, these generational cycles, but we just didn't do the right things with that information. So rather than transforming, I think that all this emphasis has been on policing and first response. And very quickly I thought, that's not the issue. The issue is what's next, right? Do we divert or do we arrest? Either it's an intervention, but then what? Oh, I am arresting so that what?
Sometimes it can be an intervention. I agree.
But it must. I'm saying it should be.
Well, I have never taken a life. I have never raped a woman. I have never shed a drop of blood outside of prison. I'm going to say that I believe that when you kill, when you murder, when you take that step, I don't believe we can divert. And I'm not saying I believe that we should put people away for 30 years or anything, but there is something that is not working right there for them. Yeah. And in order to keep them safe, in order to keep other people safe from their own bad decisions.
That's right. Totally agree.
But we need to put them in a place where we can help fix whatever that break point is.
That's right.
Because I get angry and I get in fights. But I actually try to fight the bigger guy. And I always try to make somebody get them to hit me first. And I never, ever, ever intentionally assault. I punched a guy once because I thought we were going to fight. And he looked at me. I said, okay, I think we don't know what's going on here, man. I just need you to leave. And I count him as a friend today.
just takes so long. Like what you're talking about, your degree of self-awareness about where you come from, what happened, what you contributed. Again, triggers, people use that. It doesn't mean anything anymore. You know, we say triggered all the time, but that's real. By the clinical definition, that is real.
Oh, listen, I've been triggered a number of times in this conversation because I have so much that's not healed.
Yeah.
There's so many parts of me that are still raw and hurt. And I just want to tell you that when you decide to run for office here in this state, I assure you that I will mobilize. Either one of you, I assure you, I will mobilize my friends, because the truth is we're not going to see the changes until we get people into places that are going to have actions that follow their words.
This is the saddest thing. I get asked about this all the time. And my response is, I would never. And I think that's the problem. I don't want to be beholden to power or profit or public opinion. I want to do what I think is right, you know, regardless of public opinion. And some of the things I'm saying have not been popular historically. And I like that I could, like you, that I have the freedom to say what I think is right.
To do it.
Yeah.
Well, except, I mean, the real power though is in influencing public opinion, right?
Well, I'd rather do it this way.
This is so important. Again, you sharing, you know, a platform to share a perspective that people don't have access to. It's critical. It's huge, and that's what we're trying to do here is think. You know, the proverbial think outside the box stuff.
Well,
right?
There's only one way to change laws outside of you becoming a member of the legislature, and that's called the People's Initiative. And it would be an enormous undertaking to get a People's Initiative to change things related to this system, because there will be people who resist that. The day that you want to try that strategy, please let me know. I would love to be part of. I'd love to be.
I'm gonna die trying. I am. This is so much of the suffering and the pain.
I don't know why.
Avoidable.
Like I don't know if it was just because I grew up literally locked away by myself.
Yeah.
Somebody I love deeply and care about dearly, you know, tells me that one of her favorite things about me, one of the things she really likes, is my introspection, and that when I do that, I never turn away from the challenge.
Yeah.
I never turn away from that challenge, because I never wanted to be who I was.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I never wanted to be who I was.
Yeah.
And now I want to be, when I leave, I just want to know I did the best that I could to be the best that I could.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually with Rory, and there was a man, Sam, telling me his story. And again, he had been incarcerated. I mean, it was really his whole adulthood. I think he was in his 50s. There's this sweet moment where he said, I knew I was a good person. So he was having trouble reconciling, I'm doing bad things again and again and again, but I know I'm a good person. And it was so poignant to hear that eventually, you know, somebody actually in prison, an older guy, was like, you're a good person. That's why you're so mad all the time. You know, that you're not living in alignment with who you actually are.
Yeah.
And, you know, he, I think, became a person of great faith and is living a wonderful life now. But it's again, thank God you all are talking to me.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what it was like for Sam or for you.
You know, Eric, I'd love to have some dialogue with both you and Amy on maybe even a series like, you know, let's break this down. Let's break this into parts, because experientially, I have intellectualized. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm able. I don't know how it's possible. I don't know how I'm who I am today.
Yeah.
I mean, well, actually, I do know. That's, you know, listen,
Grace of God.
God protected me. But if you would like to, I would love to have some discussion outside of this space. Like, hey, look, let's have an involved conversation about this aspect of this. What does this look like as a first-time person who's coming in? Yeah. What are diversion opportunities like for youth, right? Like, what could we do for a teen who has behavioral problems? And that may very obviously be the result of you know, we talk about ACE studies.
Right.
I got to give a plug to the University of Washington and a student organization there, Huskies for Opportunity in Prison Education, which was actually launched. My friend and colleague Yusuf Jihad was one of the people in prison. Hope was spawned from a program we were in, and we've done much good work from there. But part of what we did in 2017 or 18 was an ACE study, and we did it on 150 people in the prison, and the average was 6.2. And this free student, who's an honor student, Mackenzie, did one with her Facebook friends, and it came back 1.2 as an average.
So at five, it's like we're in trouble here, generally.
And the University of Washington was actually prepared to do a study on the population, do an ACE testing. Ran into so much red tape with the University of Washington just to get, I think it was like $2,000. And then the prison changed and then COVID hit and we never did get to do that. But if we know, because ACE started as a tool to identify childhood trauma that would result in health-related issues when a person aged. Right. We're not going to talk about all my health issues. I'm probably not going to make it till I'm 70. But we discovered as an extension of that we could identify what looked like not just childhood trauma, but childhood abuse, right? And we know that the people in prison have these enormously high scores. The people in the community receive care for their high scores, and the people in prison receive punishment for theirs. Yeah. And I feel like that's where I need to leave this off. Until next time.
That's great.
This might need to be a 2-part series.
Yeah, we're definitely we're definitely gonna need to dive into some of these aspects more deeply in the future. So we definitely will do this. Yeah.
I appreciate you both, not just for bringing me here today, but to be able to count you as friends and colleagues.
Absolutely.
I'm honored. I'm honored.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Take care of yourself. That's a lot what you're doing right now. Again, I remember.
I got my puppy Duke. I'm not gonna run. I'm not gonna run into the Meridian as long as I got Duke.
Right.
That's good. Yeah. But I do hope. I mean, I think right now there's so much education and awareness, and I hope in a couple of years you're just on the proactive side, where we just understand.
And I hope that I've healed enough and that I've discovered enough peace. But I actually lied. I want to leave this on this. Suicide rate for people who've released from confinement is an all-time high. And anybody watching this who has a friend or a loved one who's been released from confinement, I don't think that you cannot understand the things that they're going through, but you can support them through it. And please make sure that you're paying attention. Please. Because just the simple fact that I think about doing it all the time. I talk to Rory about it. I was like, man, you don't ever think about it, man? And when he tells me no, like, I don't understand how he doesn't. He told me he used to before prison. Please be mindful of the suicide rates for everybody, but in particular in this space that we're talking about.
It's real. Thank you. Yeah.
We need to take care of each other, for sure. All right, now it's hug time. You've been bombarded.
The Bombardin Podcast is a Barden Squared production. Executive producers are Eric Barden and Amy Barden, and video and audio production of the Bombardin Podcast is by Thread Theory Creative.